be a chat button.
Yeah, and I'll say they can ask questions there. I got people joining us. We'll get started here in just a minute. It takes folks a minute or two to remember that it's time to get things started. I see a few extra people trying to get in, but we will go on and get started because we know your day is valuable. Good afternoon. Welcome to the KCCE Lunch and Learn for today. For those of you who don't know, I'm Amy Cloud. I'm the Executive Director of the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce Executives Association. And we try to host 2 or 3 webinars a month with our Lunch and Learn series on topics that interest you guys and that are important to the struggles and concerns that you are working through in your day-to-day work at the local chamber level. We are really excited to have Travis Burton with us. He is the Director of Political Affairs at the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. My colleague and friend, we are fellow Garrett Countyans as well. Imagine that, 2 people from Garrett County at the state chamber is, we're pushing the percentages up there on that. Travis is going to give us an overview of what's happened in the session. It's still going on, but it's quickly coming to an end, and it's been a sprint the last couple of weeks, as you all have been able to tell by the massive amounts of emails I've been sending you guys. But we're going to let him talk about some bills and some issues and maybe some wins. But if you have questions for him during this session, please put them in the chat box and we will get those answered before we get off the webinar today. Also, remember, this is being recorded, as is all of our Lunch and Learns. If you would like to see it again, reach out to me for the link. It will also be posted on our KCCE YouTube channel as well. So I am going to turn it over to Travis. Travis, it is all you.
Thanks so much, Amy, and thanks everyone for joining us today. I will try to keep this somewhat brief. As Amy said, we are towards the end of session, so things are very busy in Frankfort world. I'm actually in Garrett County today as we're bracing for the final sprint of this session. So I want to take just a few moments and thank you all, not just for being here, but the local chambers are a pivotal part of enacting pro-business policy in Kentucky. I've had the unique opportunity to go around and talk with some of you all. And for those I haven't got to see yet, I look forward to potentially seeing you after session, but really have conversations about just how important advocacy from the local chamber community is in pushing through good, solid business policies in Frankfort. You all are in a position to make an incredible difference, and we appreciate what you do day in and day out. In addition to having to worry about what's going on in Frankfort, we know that you keep your communities running, and we thank you for all that you do and appreciate you. So to start out, this session has been one like any other. As you all know, we're still kind of in the midst of a global pandemic. Hopefully we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but nonetheless, we are still in a pandemic, and we're certainly still dealing with the impacts of COVID-19 and will be for the years to come. But this session is usually a non-budget year, but because of the pandemic, they split the state budget up and did it 1 year last year, and we'll finish that this year. Negotiations on that budget are currently underway, so kind of all attention is on that right now in Frankfort. What are they going to do for the next year in the state budget? So we're watching that closely. This session has seen some legislative wins already. Some of the bigger issues are still in flux, and we're working on those. But one of the best things that I wanted to highlight is House Bill 7, which was carried by Representative Bowling. This was an idea that someone we work closely with, Jonathan Schell and Representative Bowling, had in a program that they were in. This legislation creates recovery-ready communities. And so this bill is something the chamber has been working on for several months, and we're glad to have seen it be sent to the governor. This bill, in a lot of ways, if anyone is familiar with work-ready communities, it lays out certain criteria so that communities can be recognized as work-ready communities. This will be recovery-ready communities. So the unique thing about this bill, now it's got to be signed by the governor, but we expect it to go into law. Regulations will be formed, but this is going to place you, the local chamber community, in a very unique network, or I'm sorry, in a very unique position to be able to serve as a community convener for your local elected officials, your judge executive, your mayors, your fiscal courts, your city councils, your members, and begin to have conversations about what does it mean to be a recovery ready community? How can we get this certification when that certification is released after the bill is signed? But we think that you all can really be leaders in that and help your communities get a jump start in becoming a recovery ready community. That's going to be important to your members because one of the, as we know and you know, one of the biggest challenges we all workforce issues and having availability to a ready and willing workforce. So this is the workforce aspect is why we're so passionate and excited about recovery ready communities. And we'll be getting out information to you as it becomes available, but it's going to be a really unique opportunity for you. And we want to work closely with you in helping be leaders in getting your communities certified as recovery ready communities. So that's been one big win. Now, as we go towards the final part of session, there's three major things that the legislature needs to do in order to say that they took action to help Kentucky's businesses and business community and economy recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. The first thing that they have to do is deal with the UI issue, the unemployment insurance fund. That has been depleted. That was depleted last year because the fund was completely funded, and it put us in a category where businesses were paying the least amount that they ever had to on the unemployment fee. Now, because of the fund being depleted, that moved us to a different schedule, hitting every Kentucky employer with an increased cost. And that averages out to about $100 per employee. That's a big unbudgeted for expense. We want to get that fund solvent again as soon as possible. So in addition to the legislature taking action to delay payments for businesses, so if they haven't budgeted for that so that they're not hit with that unexpected expense, we appreciate that legislation. But they've got to put money, and especially as it looks, what we think is going to happen is the federal government's going to pass this bill. It's not been signed into law yet. The bill that has been worked on in Washington, D.C. that would provide a lot of funding to states. That money needs to go into that UI fund and make it solvent so that we can more quickly get that fund back to where it needs to be so that cost to employers is lowered. That's a problem that we face today that they can take action on and provide a solution for tomorrow pretty quickly. So we are asking them to take action on that. The other, number two that I'd like to highlight is Senate Bill 5, providing liability protections to our employers from frivolous COVID-19 lawsuits. This bill, Senate Bill 5, was worked on in the fall by various stakeholder groups, including the chamber and other business entities, healthcare, education groups. Over 60 groups are publicly, and many of the local chambers are publicly supporting Senate Bill 5. Why is this important? And to you that I've been able to talk to, we've talked about this leading up to session, but if you've got a small business that is hanging on for dear life and they get an unexpected lawsuit because someone wandered in their store and said, I got COVID-19 there. They're going to sue that business. Now, will the business be able to survive in court? Possibly, but think about this. Think of all the expenses before that small business will have its day in court. That's going to be consultation with an attorney. That can be $500 to $1,000. That's going to be different hearings, discovery. The cost will pile up on that small business to defend themselves against anyone who just wants to throw out a claim. Of course, we don't want to prevent anyone from being able to file a claim that needs to. We just want to make sure that if someone's going to sue a business for a COVID-19 related reason, that it's legitimate. And so we are so thrilled that the Senate passed this bill last week, but it is now waiting for action in the House. I'm going to put in the chat box and I know Amy has been sending out our stuff, but if you have not used our phone to action to contact your legislator, we would ask that you use this. Just go ahead and do it right now. This just simply contacts your representative and says, hey, please pass Senate Bill 5. They need to hear from as many people as possible. We encourage you to send that link to your members. If you need language from us to include in an email, just let us know. We're happy to help in any way. This is vital as we look to reopen our businesses, as schools are reopening, and as healthcare providers continue to take care of our citizens. We need Frankfort to act to ensure that they're not going to become subjects of frivolous lawsuits. We know nationally, especially, that advertising is already up in the millions and millions and millions of dollars trying to find people willing to sue businesses. So it's coming. And you know what? If we're wrong and there's not a wave of frivolous lawsuits coming, great. Then what does it hurt to go ahead and pass this legislation? This legislation only relates to COVID-19. It has an end date. It won't last forever. We need Frankfort to protect our business community, our education community, and our healthcare community from these frivolous lawsuits. The last major bill that kind of hangs in the balance is infrastructure. It's very uncommon that you will find the Kentucky Chamber or any business entity advocating for an increase in taxes of any form. However, the gas tax is different because you are paying a little bit more, marginally more at the pump, and you immediately see that money reinvested into your infrastructure. If you ever hit a pothole, it does damage to your car over time. I hit the same pothole just about every day, and I know that's damaging my car. And I know in the long run, if I paid a little bit more at this gas station next to our house, that pothole would probably be able to go away and not inflict damage on my car. But this has become something that other states around us, including states controlled by the same party that our state legislature is controlled by, have passed this increase so that they can invest in their infrastructure. It matters because it's a jobs bill. It creates jobs in our infrastructure world, but it also maintains the quality infrastructure we need for jobs to come here, for our exports to leave here, and for our products to be imported here. It's important on every front. This is an issue that has not been addressed over the last few years. It's needed to be addressed. This is the year to do it. As much as we like to focus on policy and not politics, I have two things to say to that. People do not lose elections statistically by taking a vote on increasing the gas tax. No one likes the word tax, but at the end of the day, I think people are more uncomfortable with paying higher taxes and not really understanding or knowing where that money is going and getting lost in government bureaucracy and red tape. With this, that's not the case. People don't lose elections statistically based on this. Also politically, if it's going to be a political issue, next year is an election year. So it's much less likely that next year that anybody would want to be talking about any kind of tax measure when they have an opponent at home actively running against them. This is the year to take action on infrastructure. We also have a phone to action page set up on that. I'm going to put that in the chat. We would really appreciate it if you would click on it and utilize that, send it to your members. Amy may have already sent that, but yeah, please take advantage of that. So those three things have got to be acted on by the General Assembly. In addition to those three big ticket items, there's a few other things still in the works that we're watching closely. There's several bills dealing with the KEYS scholarship. This is money that students earn in high school and that they can use to go to the next step after high school, whether that's post-secondary, 4-year, or to get a 2-year certificate. We have long advocated for more flexibility for this fund because we want students to take that next step after high school. And there's not one answer for every student. Every student's different. So there is a bill out there, House Bill 338, that would include increased flexibility with KEYS money and allow Kentucky students to open the doors to more institutions to get them ready for the workforce. There's also a House Bill 25 that would remove the requirement that a recipient of the KEYS scholarship not be a felon. That's important because if a student makes one mistake and gets that on their record and we prevent them from having access to the scholarship, in turn preventing them from trying to get their life back on track. So we want to build our workforce and put more people in it, not prevent people from entering it. And also when we're preventing and creating barriers for people to enter the workforce, we're making it more difficult for them to recover and do the things that they need to do to move forward. There's also legislation dealing with the state school board. This is a bill that we have been vocally supportive of along with education entities. This would just put parameters on how our state school board is appointed. When the current governor took office, within 24 hours, he completely redid the state school board and removed every sitting member and replaced them with all members of his political party. So this law would simply put into place guidelines of requirements for the composition of that board so that we can have certainty in that very, very important governing body. This would not kick anyone off of the current board, but over time, this would add in and create balance. And so we would be we want to take the politics out of the state school board of education. So that bill is being heard in committee on Thursday. It's been passed by the House. We're hopeful the Senate will pass it. They passed it last year. And so we're hopeful they'll take that up this year. With that,
Travis, what bill is that for the state school board? I
I don't know the number off the top of my head.
Oh, that's fine.
But it's carried by Steve Sheldon. And at this point, there's about 600 bills flying around. So keeping up with all those numbers is not easy for someone with my limited intelligence. So I did want to add that earlier in the session, this has also been a great session for our signature industries. Most recently, legislation was passed modernizing our alcohol laws and shipping laws. That's been a big win for our bourbon industry. And also historical horse racing was passed. And that was extremely important to that industry to protect the infrastructure we already have in place for that sector. Including historical horse racing machines and these gaming machines that already exist in Kentucky. They've been there for years. The Supreme Court a year or so back said the legislature needs to rule on this. So the legislature ruled on it and made clear that those are permissible in Kentucky. If they had not have done that, and we would have got to the end of session without that bill, that would have been an immediate loss of jobs throughout the state, jobs directly at those facilities and industries that are kind of satellite industries around those. We would have seen an immediate impact and more people in the unemployment line, which is what we had hoped to avoid. So it's been a good session for the signature industries already. But now our attention's focused on those three major issues: unemployment, liability protections, and infrastructure.
Can you see the chat box? Dina's got a question about the state school board issue.
Let's see. We currently, there really are no qualifications as it stands. So any governor can come in and decide who they want to be on there. I'd have to look. I know there are makeup, and I believe that it does account for making sure there are education voices, people, subject matter, and also it does ensure that education voices, people that deal in and day out with it, are a part of that. Really what it does is it kind of mimics the state university system, so that there has to be an appropriate number of both parties, both genders, and it does account for some of that background in education and familiar with that subject matter. So yes.
Anybody else got some questions? This is the time to ask when you feel like you don't know about what's going on. We're just amongst friends.
And we've got information coming out every day. The bottom line, the Kentucky Chamber bottom line, I'm sure you're all familiar with. Amy, I know, forwards information from there, but we will continually update that. Thursday, Thursday is going to be a very busy day. It's we're in this time frame where committees are going to meet, and they've basically got to take action. If they don't, it's very unlikely that any kind of bill that hasn't seen action in the committee could make its way through the process. That's not to say strange things don't happen. Sometimes stuff pops up. I'll tell you another bill that we're watching closely. If anyone has a question, please put it in the chat, but I did want to put this on your radar. House Bill 553. It is a bill that has come up in the past. Actually, former House Speaker Greg Stumbo sponsored this bill several years back, but it essentially deputizes private citizens to be able to file lawsuits on behalf of the state if they have reason to believe there's any kind of fraud. And this bill deals specifically with Medicaid. So you're talking about entities that, if you have a member in your local chamber that touches Medicaid at all, they would be impacted by this bill. If they make a typo on a report, this bill could subject them to having to go through a lawsuit. And when we talk about going through a lawsuit, please remember, we're not talking about the end result. We're just talking about having to hire attorneys, having to pay attorneys, and then probably ending up settling, which does cost money, whether or not anyone did anything wrong. We believe in tackling fraud. We have mechanisms in place that do that. But this bill lowers the threshold for those lawsuits. And like I said, it incentivizes people, private citizens, to sue on behalf of the state because they get a cut if there is a settlement or a final judgment. And so this is taking a major leap towards increasing the number of frivolous lawsuits in Kentucky. And so we're very concerned about it. There's been a large coalition, including several local chambers, that have asked, or that are currently asking the House not to pass this bill. That the bill is set to pass the House. It's setting in the orders of the day. It's been there for most of last week. They didn't act on it, but it's still there, and we're watching it, and we're trying to keep the pressure up on that. Because I will say, and when I've met with several of you in person, one of the things we talk about, it's great when we can talk about good policy passing, but just as important is working together as a business community to keep bad bills from passing and to keep bad policies from progressing. There's a whole lot of savings, almost $1 billion per year, that we save businesses in Kentucky because we prevent bad legislation from passing.
Dina's asking another one. What about the digital divide?
We do have good information about the digital divide. The House last week added $250 million to the broadband fund. And that broadband fund is where we're going to see the most action in Kentucky in trying to increase access to quality broadband. I was in McLean County and their chamber, when I met with their chamber, they had students upstairs using their broadband to do their homework. This pandemic has highlighted in McLean County and throughout Kentucky the need to address this digital divide situation. If there's anything good to come from COVID, it's highlighted some of the areas we've really got to focus in on, and broadband is one of them. And luckily, we were able to get the House to add in not just 100 million, but 250 million into that fund. And that, if that sticks, we will consider that a big win on the digital divide front. And I would.
All right, who else? No, I was just saying, who else has a question?
And just so you all know, and I know you communicate directly with Amy, just keep doing that, please, and ask her any questions. And we want to be a resource for you. We want to continue to be good partners. We want to keep the lines of communication open. So please, at any time, if you hear of a member that has a question, or if you have a question, or if you have an idea, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Hey, Travis, I know that we talked about House Bill 5 earlier. Do you want to mention what I'm going to ask them this afternoon about the letter, or how do you want to handle that with that being the group we're getting to kind of act tomorrow? Tomorrow being their day.
Senate Bill 5 is the liability bill that we talked about, and we've got different groups who are sending a letter or a note, an email to the legislature each day. And so we're going to put together a letter just from local chambers. We have several local chambers who've already signed on to a letter that went out to the legislature today. But this note is going to just kind of highlight that the local chamber community itself is supporting the bill. So if anyone's interested in that, please let us know. We'll be putting that together probably to go out tomorrow or Thursday. So.
Yeah, I'll be sending the letter out to the KCCE network with the letter attached, unless people want it today. There's another question about a member struggling to get a PPP loan as he is in the middle of Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Any source you can go to for assistance or advice?
Just Amy, if you can get their information, and we'll try to. I don't know off the top of my head all of the different resources out there, but I know like the U.S. Chamber, I believe, has a guide, and we've done some work on this, but I don't have it at my fingertips.
Yep, I will get that to you, Dina. Any word on modernizing the road aid formula, like more equitable funding for cities versus counties?
The focus right now on infrastructure and the gas formula is found in House Bill. I believe it's 561, 461, 561. Again, I get all these numbers so confused, but the phone to action link. Both the League of Cities and KCO, the county association, are supporting that bill. So that's kind of where our focus is, because getting that investment up is the first step. I can't speak to if there's any I know that if it isn't raised to a certain level, that it wouldn't be advantageous for the cities or for the counties. And so that's kind of why we are at the ask that we are. And we continue to work closely with KCO and KLC to advocate for that bill.
All right. It can be overwhelming. I understand. That's why we try to do as much information sharing as possible. I do appreciate you guys entertaining the emails that I keep forwarding from our lobbyist in the public affairs department. But this is the way that you all know. I say time and time again that you all are our last mile messaging. So for the folks that don't hear it and then still don't hear it, we count on you all to be the ones that they finally listen to and hear information about. And also to, it's good for you all to know your local community folks and engage them in contacting their legislator as well. So that's why we keep bugging you guys, and we appreciate you all entertaining that. But I know we've said it time and time again at the Kentucky Chamber this year, our local chamber network has been more engaged than we've ever seen. And we appreciate that. And I know the legislators do too. Some of y'all might not realize it, but our legislators really appreciate hearing from home. They say that to us constantly when they're in Frankfurt, that they want to hear from home because they want to feel like they're listening to their constituents and not making a decision based on one or two or three emails or researchers they have in their office. They want to feel like they are representing the people that elected them, and that's you guys. So make sure you really take advantage of that as well. And if you've got questions about what they're asking, or if you see something in the paper or on the bottom line and go, what does that mean for me? That's what Travis is here for, to call up and say, what does this mean to me? You know, how do we do it? What else do we have before we let Mr. Travis go? Anybody?
I just want to say thank you all again for the opportunity. Keep in touch, and thanks for all you're doing in your community.
Yeah, we appreciate it. We will have our next Lunch and Learn on March the 24th. You all will get information about that. So we hope to see you guys then. And I'll let you guys go. Have a good rest of the week. Thanks.